energetic because I have had so much going on this morning and I couldn't get this PowerPoint to save to my USB to give to Brian. So I'm not tired. I'm like, But you might have gone through an amazing seminar. I know you did, and I'm sad to have missed it. And your mind might be a little blown like, wow, that was so awesome. And there was so much that I learned. So why don't you go ahead and stand up and stretch a little. And we're going to do our breathing correctly this time. We're going to come in through the nose and just go. And hold it. So good to get all of that oxygen in your lungs. Let's do it 2 more times. We're going to go. Watching online, they're going to think they're doing something weird, but we're not. We're just getting oxygen. All right, ready? And now just do anything that's going to help your body stay awake or feel better. You've been sitting, and just right here is where I take my tension. I have to put my shoulders down purposefully. All right, I don't know if you need to jump a little or anything like that. Anything to get your blood moving. You've got oxygen. That's good. Run in place. Good. All right, good job. And listen, what I always told my students is, because some people like my dad and my son Aaron, they can't sit still. They can't sit still this long. And so if you need to go to the back and walk around and jump up and down or whatever, I would tell my students, if you can't sit, just go to the back. And then if you need to do whatever you're doing, not disturb people. So please know that if you're tired of sitting, please do that. Okay, we're going to talk about healing today, personal healing. Yesterday we talked about being there for others, and that is a picture that I took near where my dad lives. And I'm thinking about him today because we're working hard to get him some help today and for the last month and a half. Why don't we say a prayer now? Father God, thank you. You are already here with us in our hearts, at camp meeting, in this place. We ask for your angels to be here. We ask for your peace to be in our minds, and your love to be in our hearts. We ask for open minds to be able to learn what you would have us learn. Holy Spirit, go to each one and bring to them what they need for this time. In Jesus' name, amen. So we'll do a quick little review. To grieve is, ever since the fall, we grieve because we love. Why do we grieve? Because we love. Grief is a story that needs to be told. Excellent. And grief is a story that needs to be heard or shared. Yes, shared. We weren't meant to be grief containers. And that's where grief is a story that needs to be heard. I think I need to switch those. All right, here are the ones that we're going to learn today. And it's a lot, but I'll be going over them with you. We can't heal what we don't what? Grief is powerful. It will create or destroy. The loss doesn't go away. It becomes part of our larger story. Our response is more important, more impactful on us long term than even the what? The response is more impactful or important than the loss. You can create meaning, and God can bring gifts from loss. Is this my song? Yes. All right. I hope this just stays in your brain, that there are parts of this. The part that always stays with me is morning is coming.
If you have felt the dark of night, questioning what is out of sight, He is the answer, He is the light. If you have felt the weight of sin, bound by In grief and in glory, still great is his faithfulness. If you felt broken and betrayed, no one to trust, alone, afraid, he'll comfort you. He knows your name. If you wrestled with the ache of loss and why this has been your road to walk, he bore your pain, he wore your cross. Lift your head. Morning is coming, there's more to the story. Don't forget. In grief and in glory, still great is his faithfulness. Oh, he is present, helper, keeper. Great is his faithfulness, perfect, sovereign, fortress. Great is his faithfulness. Abba, my Father, comfort. Great is his faithfulness, Redeemer, Restorer, Sustainer. Great is his faithfulness. Wait on him, rest in him. Come find your peace again. Trust in him, hope in him. Great is his faithfulness. Wait on him, rest in him. Come find your peace again. Trust in him, hope in him. Great is his faithfulness. Lift your head. Morning is coming, there's more to the story. Don't forget. In grief and in glory, still great is his faithfulness. In grief and in glory, still great is his faithfulness. Oh, in grief and in glory, still great is his faithfulness.
Check out to you just really quickly. Was there a name of Jesus, an aspect of his character, hope? Just quickly, just say it out. Anything that the words that stick out to you. There's more to the story. Abba. What else? Great is his faithfulness. What else? In grief or in glory? Fortress. Oh, it gives me chills. I love to hear truth about God. You don't hear it on the news. You don't hear it in the marketplace. But he is all of those things and more to us. All right, today we're going to talk about personal loss, but I want to remind you of what we talked about yesterday, in that as a comforter, this is you. The Spirit of the Lord is on you because the Lord has anointed you to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent you to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God. This is from a favorite book of one of our scholars here. And this is a messianic prophecy, and it's what Jesus quoted in Luke when he first started speaking in the synagogue. And this is the mission that he's given you. And it's so exciting to be able to be his emissary to do those things. Yesterday's opportunities for healing and growth Who spent at least 5 minutes quiet time with God? Excellent. That's about half. I'll go back to the homework. Well, yeah, I'll go back to the homework. And you did this. You shared a story of when someone supported you well yesterday. Was that fun to hear and to remember? You listened well, like a heart with ears. And this was your homework. What is one action you can take to be there for someone grieving? Who is it? And when will you do it? Raise your hands if you came up with a name, thought about what you were going to do, and a time when you were going to do it. Who did that? Excellent. Guess what? The rest of you can do it right now. Who is it? You know. Who's been grieving in your life? It can be any kind of loss. Who needs encouragement from you? It's been a while maybe since their loved one died or they received a diagnosis. Who is it? You've got it in your mind, right? What are you going to do? You're going to write a text. You're going to write a note. You're going to give a call. You're going to just what? You're going to take them out for lunch. And when are you going to do that? When you get back, you're going to get into your rhythm again, and then you're going to do it next week. Are you going to do it on Sabbath? It's really important that you decide when you're going to do it too. Okay. Was there anything else? No. All right, I'm going to tell you a story of a loss. We've been talking about the loss of death. We've been talking about really difficult losses. This is a different kind of living loss. So my son, Aaron, is my youngest son, and he was about to get married. And I found myself in a couple weeks before that, just like having these anxiety kind of panic feelings. And I kind of knew it was about Aaron, and I didn't want to deal with it. And I finally said to myself, are you going to walk your talk? This is not what you would tell people to do. You would tell people to name it, feel the feelings, go with it, go through it with God, work it out, process it. But I didn't want to because I also am human and don't love pain. But I woke up, and this isn't my usual, this doesn't happen a lot at all. I woke up one night and just felt panicky, and I jumped out of bed, and I started to name what I was feeling. Here's the thing. My son Aaron was marrying somebody that I love. He'd been dating her since high school, since they went to Collegedale Academy. It wasn't a bad decision. I was for it, but I was feeling a loss. What was I feeling a loss of? He wasn't just going to be part of our family, his family of origin anymore. Things were about to change, and I was going to have to let go of him in a new way. And so I had to think about it. I had to go through his life and think about, was I a good mom? Where was I a good mom? Where did I wish I had done differently? You kind of take stock of that. And I had to let go of little baby Aaron and little toddler Aaron and grade school Aaron. He was a handful. And high school Aaron when he was graduating, and I thought about each stage. And I let it go. I loved it. I looked at it. I looked at the good and the bad. And then I let it go. I let it go. Right before, he quit his internship on Friday. He had to be back on Sunday or Monday. We flew him from Tennessee to Colorado to be with us like 48 hours, if that, because it was the last time. It was the last time when he would just be part of us. And so this is in the back seat, looking like little kids. And this is the original crew. Nathan is married with kids, so he couldn't come. Their aunt had given them little fake mustaches and goatees. And so there you have it. And we had one more weekend together. And I let it go. I let it go to Jesus. And when I was sitting that weekend in the Collegedale church with my family and his family. And I was listening to the sermon. I was watching someone get baptized. And I thought with gratitude that we were all there. And I thought, you know, what I didn't do well is covered by God's grace. And what I did do well was grace. It's all grace. And that weekend at the wedding, I was able to be fully present. I had no regrets. I had given them to God. I had no grief. I had dealt with that. And I was able to step into the new reality because as I had gone through each stage with little Aaron and bigger Aaron and adult Aaron, then I just stepped back and I closed the door on that part of his life, like you close the door very softly when you finally get them to sleep. I just shut it and I tiptoed away. And that part of his life was done. And I loved the wedding. I was fully present. Look at that beautiful young woman that he married. She's a nurse. She's going to be a nurse practitioner. He's going to do some leadership stuff in internship with Advent Health. And will they have trials and tribulations? Are they, you know, they've got a whole life ahead of them. But I'm so grateful. And I was able to be fully present. Beloved sons and daughters of God, some of us, and all of us, if we don't deal with it, can be trailing pain or just trailing grief that we don't want to deal with. I ugly cried my way through 2 times of doing what I just told you. But then it was cleared, and I could be present. When we have all those things that we haven't processed and dealt with, all of those windows open, then it's just that wah feeling, and it's hard to be fully present. But when we deal with them, we can be right where we are.
I said 2 of mine came back home, so you don't always have them gone.
No, that is so true. But you can deal with what was, and then you only have to deal with what is, which can be its own thing. The reason that we're dealing with grief this week is because it affects your relationship with God. It affects your relationship with others. It affects your ability to comfort and support others. And because guess what? You matter to God, just you, even without you sharing and your misery becoming your ministry, just you. And so we're going to talk about some things, because if we don't let God comfort us in all our troubles, we only have cold comfort or miserable comfort or intellectual comfort to give heart, pain, support in other people. All right, here's something I want to tell you again, beloved sons and daughters of God. You're here at camp meeting. Your relationship with God matters. You are putting work into this. But as Christians, sometimes we just want to skip from grief to gratitude because we know we're going to end up grateful. We know God is good. It's clear in the scriptures and in other parts of our life. And so we just say, no, it's okay. I know it's going to work out and everything. And we say the right words, and that's good. But you have got to work through. You can't just skip from grief to gratitude. You need to work through this. If I had tried to do that at the wedding and I was grateful, I would have been suppressing some things. And they would have come to me and I would have said, no, I'm happy. But they would have still been there. Super important. What does grief feel like? Here's some things. Confused, overwhelmed. Some of us get angry, understandably, because we've been robbed or bereft. Despairing, because there's nothing we can do to bring our loved one back, for example. It can affect your eating, sleeping. It affects every area of your life. That's grief. And sometimes you can think, I'm losing it. I don't want to eat, blah, blah, blah. That's grief because, for example, in death, someone you love, or maybe your own cognition or mobility or that of someone you love, those things have an effect, as we know as Seventh-day Adventists, body, mind, and soul all together. Everything is affected. And so it's really good to check in with somebody because it may not feel normal. And to have someone normalize your grief, yes, it can affect your ability to think, to remember. Really high percentage of people get sick or have accidents right after a loss because so much of their mind is taken up by trying to understand how can someone, for example, who I've known my whole life be gone? I can't make sense of that in my mind. And that's about to happen to me. I don't know how long it'll be. And I'm kind of grieved up to where I am, but when it comes, my mind will still need to work it through. Just even the absence of someone you love. So, grief feels like all of these things: confusion, overwhelm. It's a very, very strong emotion, perhaps the strongest one we feel. We talked about the myths of grief that sometimes seem not. We talked about some of the STIRBs, short-term energy-relieving behaviors that distract us from the thoughts and feelings of grief that we don't want to feel because nobody loves pain. It causes more difficulty and distress. For example, if somebody goes to alcoholism, drug and alcohol use, not only when they wake up with a headache and drunk, do they deal with the hurt that's still there, they also will deal with whatever mess they made while they were drunk. These things don't help us, and you could go down that list. You know how many people just have stuff in their closets with tags on them still because they're trying to feel better and fill that hole with something. These things do not allow for grief processing, but rather continue to push feelings and thoughts down and away, and just hoping that they'll go away. We cannot deny, suppress. Remember what I said? You can't bury something alive. You try. You're actually using energy you don't even realize to keep that thing down. And it will come out at times, make a big mess on someone who doesn't deserve it when you least expect it, and you're going to have a lot to clean up. Avoid, medicate. We can medicate with good things, staying busy in church, so I don't have to think about it. Busy, busy, busy. Isolating. Academy Award recovery. Looking good because people are tired of you still mourning a loss. Here's what you need to do. Stop and acknowledge the loss. Take note of your feelings. Name the loss. Experience the grief and make conscious choices around it. That's not running. That's not doing disturbing things, not STIRBs. This is part of healthy processing. So let's look at how I did it with Aaron. First of all, I tried to do these things, but it just doesn't go away. And if you keep trying to suppress it, then it'll come out in migraines. It'll come out in hypertension. It's a great book by one of our Adventist doctors at Florida Hospital on Forgive to Live. Unforgiveness, and forgiveness is really a part of grief processing. It can affect all sorts of your bodies. It can lower your immune system. Stop and acknowledge the loss. So I was having these feelings, and finally I said, okay, this is having to do with Aaron getting married. And I could have skipped from grief to gratitude. Yeah, but he's marrying somebody I love, and I prayed that he'd get married early. I'll just share this with you, because he's so good looking. People stop him on the street since he was little. And they thought he was Justin Bieber. And they thought he was a celebrity when he went on his new... Somebody in Milan, he just went on a graduation trip, stopped him and said, "You are the most beautiful man I've ever seen." And so that's a lot. That's a lot to carry. And that is not good for your character unless you really give it to God. And so I have taught him since he was little about this, and I have prayed that he falls in love hard and gets married soon. And that's what he did. And I had to remind myself of that when I thought, this is young. But God reminded me, actually, that that's what I prayed for. So you can't skip from grief to gratitude. I couldn't just say, yeah, but I'm so glad he's married, because I still had those feelings. Take note of the feelings. What are those feelings? Anxiety, concern. I'm grieving. Why? Because Aaron is going to not be part of just our family anymore. I had to name it and then express it. I talked it out with God, side of my bed, and I wrote it out with God, and I ugly cried. So that got out of me. Man, that felt scary and hard when I was doing it, but so good after it, and made conscious choices around it. With me, I was able to work it out between God and I talking to Jeff. Sometimes your conscious choice needs to be, I need to talk to somebody else as well, somebody in the body of Christ, or to do specific grief work on it. So what is the way forward? Run toward the pain. Be a buffalo, not a little mooing cow and running away from it. Face it, not avoid it. Acknowledge and name it, not deny it. Express it, not suppress it. Address it, not medicate it. Does that make sense? So here you go. Be a buffalo. I don't want to see you turn and tail and moo, moo. I want to see you move towards the pain and trust God and yourself that you're going to be able to get through that. And often with another person, really important. Healing is not a head game, it's heart work. And we're going to talk tomorrow about biblical lament and looking specifically at David. Did you know over a third of the Psalms, which are songs, are written in a minor key? Well, we don't talk about the minor keys. We only talk about often the praises. Grief graphing. If you want to talk with me individually, I will tell you that that has been the most powerful tool that I've ever seen as I do client work and in my own life. And that's taking all of this and putting it here, the good and the bad in that relationship, and working with each thing until you can complete the shoulda, woulda, couldas. I wish I had said it better, differently, more. I wish they had heard it. It's amazingly, amazingly effective completing those unexpressed emotions. And I promise you that recovery is possible. If you can't work with the grief coach, if you can work with me, because I can Zoom all over the world. And this isn't like an advertisement for me. This is, I love to be able to see people recover. This, I thought I got a picture of this book. It may come up later, but write this down just in case. The Grief Recovery book by John W. James and Russell Friedman. If you put James in Grief Recovery, you'll get it. There's a website. This is one of the things I'm certified in. And let me tell you something. When I heard grief recovery method, I thought, as if there is a method for everybody. I was not impressed by that. But people I really respected said, this is something worthwhile. Go to it. And I went through their first and their advanced training. I've never been through anything that I thought, this is worth every penny and every second I'm spending here. There was no fluff. It was completely helpful and amazing. Now listen, if you get this book, don't just read this book. You can read it and intellectually think, yeah, I can see how that would help somebody, and you will not be helped. This is a book to get and do with somebody else, either a grief coach or someone that you trust in your life. You have to do the activities. You have to tell the stories, do the activities, tell them to someone safe and have them listen and not give you advice, but just be a heart with ears. This is incredibly effective. There is something that they bring out in that recovery method, which we know, and that is forgiveness is a key to healing. God's forgiveness of us, which we have to experience. And when we're grieving, we may need to forgive ourselves because maybe there's a real reason we need to forgive, or several reasons, things we wish we could have told that person or done. Maybe, and this happens with many, many people, children to adults, in trying to understand why this happened, we blame ourselves. If only we had gone to breakfast with them earlier, they wouldn't have crossed the street and gotten hit. if only I had made that call. If only. That happens so much because we're trying to find a way to deal with it. So there's forgiving ourselves. There's forgiving that person because sometimes we bedevil or enshrine, like they're dead. All we can remember is how horrible they were to us. That feeling of reaching out for someone and having them never be who they should have been. And then after they're dead, reaching out one more time to find out they're still not there for you. Or reaching out for someone who's been there for you and reaching out one more time and they're not because they're dead. Those are hard things. Sometimes we have to forgive them, though. They weren't a saint. They weren't a devil. That's Jesus. That's Satan. And part of being a mature person is realizing that people are not saints or devils. And being able to love people because we're all a mix. And we're different kinds of mixes as Jesus grows us up towards him and as we allow him to change us. But nobody's perfect except Jesus that walked this earth. So the other person we sometimes have to forgive is God. Now we know here God did not do anything. He's God. He's perfect. He's love. But we can have anger against him and working it out, come to the place where we can say, I know here you are still good. So I want to tell you, you know who Corrie ten Boom is? Has anybody seen that movie or read the book, The Hiding Place? So impactful. And there are more recent examples of this too, but two stories really stuck out to me with this. One is I don't know if you've read the book Tramp for the Lord, which she also wrote. So good. And this was after she got out of the concentration camp. But she and started to travel and tell her story. So she and her sister and her father harbored Jews during World War II. They were in Holland. And they got caught, and the father died, elderly, godly man, in a hallway somewhere, and in the Nazis' possession. And they were in a horrible concentration camp, Ravensbrück. And Betsy died there. Corrie was able to stay alive. She was stronger. She stayed alive. So many beautiful, amazing things amidst the horror. And that light is stronger than darkness. Well, after she got out, she went and talked about the forgiveness of God because they had a place that Betsy had seen in a dream where they were inviting people, Holocaust victims, to come and heal. And everybody who came received healing if they forgave the perpetrators. Body, mind, and soul. If they did not forgive, they were not able to. They were not able to move on. And so she lived this and preached it and taught it and mentored and helped it. And one day, after speaking on forgiveness, she went back to shake everybody's hands. And one man came and said, I had no idea that I could be forgiven. And she went to shake his hand, and it was a guard who had laughed at them and hurt them. And she just froze in all of what happened with her sweet sister, and the people that were no longer alive came back to her in living color, and she could not move her hand to shake it. And she's talking to God in her brain like we often do and saying, I can't. I want to, but I can't. You have got to help me. I just spoke on forgiveness. And God said, I will help you. You have to move your hand. And so she moved her hand to shake that man's. And it was like this electricity, this Holy Spirit power just went through her to him. And she was able to do that. But she had to live it out. And it's hard, people. Sometimes we forgive a perpetrator. We really do. And then they come into our lives again. Something happens to engage that part of us again. And then we have a choice. Are we going to forgive again or take it up again? And forgiveness does not mean what you did is okay. I understand. You had a hard life. I can understand the context. That's excusing And that's just sweeping it under the rug. Jesus doesn't say of us, oh, honey, I understand you were born into a sinful world. It's okay. He died to get us that forgiveness. He didn't excuse it. He forgave. And the only healing that can come to you from forgiving, for relating to someone who's a perpetrator, is forgiving, not excusing. Or holding the resentment, which you've heard, I think, it's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to drop dead. A lot of time that perpetrator, they're not even thinking about you. They're going on and perpetrating other things, or they've forgotten about it. You're poisoning yourself. To forgive is not excusing. Forgive does not say it's okay. If it was okay, you would not have to forgive. It's not okay. Forgiveness doesn't mean, I'm open for you to do that again. There are people you need to forgive and you need to ask Jesus, do I let them in my life again? Sometimes we don't let them in because we're mad or we're proud. Sometimes they are not safe people. And you don't even write them and tell them you've forgiven them. You just live out forgiveness. And you let it go to Jesus and you trust him. You trust God the Father to be the righteous judge and to do with them what is right. We cannot hold another person's soul. Jesus is the burden bearer and he is the forgiver. So they may never need to come into your sphere. You may never want to have your children in their sphere, but you can forgive. Really important. That forgiveness piece is so important as you work out that relationship with a person, forgiving yourself, forgiving them, and letting go of resentment towards God if that's needed. You can make meaning. You can make meaning after a loss or after death. Meaning is relative and personal, and by that I mean you figure out, we don't tell someone else what their meaning is. You ask God, you look at it, and you decide what God is bringing, and meaning takes time. You don't just jump to it. That's so great. Look at, some people have the gift of helps, and that's one of the gifts. I'm having allergies. That's one of the gifts Luis has. I had a little bit of a kind of throat the other day, and he brought me water. Isn't it a beautiful thing to have the gifts of help, to notice and bring something? Thank you so much. No, Jeff is confessing about how he does not have that gift. But he has other gifts, right? Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. I got a little something on my lip. We're falling apart today.
I think it's from the club. Oh, no, you're good. I don't know. Yeah, you're good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, the body of Christ. We take care of each other, right? Thank you so much. So, meaning takes time. You don't know. You can't just jump to it. Meaning doesn't require understanding. There are things we won't understand right till we get to heaven. Even when you do find the meaning, you won't feel probably that it was worth the cost of what you lost. Let's think about the Mothers Against Drunk Driving woman. I think she'd rather have her daughter back. But she made meaning out of that daughter's death. And how many lives were saved because of what she did? Loss is what happens to you in life. Meaning is what you make happen after the loss. And we're going to talk about some of the ways to do that. Only you can find your own meaning. Only you can do it in your time and in your way. I'm going to talk to you about David Kessler tomorrow. An amazing man, so gifted, great writer, but like Solomon right now, and I just pray a little prayer for David Kessler. He has gone to spiritualism. He has left what was so good. All right. How will you choose to respond to loss? Life is not primarily what happens to you. It's hard to believe that. It's about how you choose to respond. The rest of your life can be ruined, or you can make meaning and respond in a way that leaves you able to be fulfilled and live a fulfilling life and bless others. It is the hard days, the days that challenge you to the very core, that will determine who you are. Are you going to fold up? Are you going to just be hot, angry? Are you going to get cold angry? Are you going to not be able to trust anymore? You will be defined not just by what you achieve, but by how you survive. Loss is going to happen. Whew, I don't like telling you that. You already know it, but it's not fun. This isn't what they tell you, right? When you graduate or when you get married or sometimes even when you get baptized. Sometimes you just think everything's going to be perfect now. Eventually, nobody lives happily ever after. But you can live, what would you say? I call him Jeffrey Chrysostom. It means, because Jeffrey is his first name, Geoffrey, Old English spelling. And Chrysostom means the golden-tongued. And that was an early Christian exegete. So what would you say? Pardon? You can live well. Right? I love that. You're not going to live happily ever after. Nobody does. But you can live well. Very nice. Write that down for me, please. So this is from someone who knows loss well. This is Jerry Sitzer, who wrote A Grace Disguised, How the Soul Grows Through Loss. He is a religion professor, and his family was a homeschooling family. And they had gone to visit a Native American reservation. They had had such a neat time. They had met with the chief. They had done a meeting, like a council, been in on it. And the chief had talked to him about how his heart was broken, that there was so much drinking and alcoholism on his reservation. And as they left the place talking about it, a drunk driver came and hit them head on. And in one horrible accident, he lost his mother, his daughter, and his wife. Unspeakable. And he's trying to recover. And if you've ever lost somebody, even like a girlfriend or boyfriend, but these three people, a song comes on and it reminds you of. You see a book and it reminds you of. You see a billboard and it was constant remembrance of one of those people in his life that he loved so much. And the feeling of despair and just falling in a black hole. And how over time, not just with like, I know God is good and I'll see them again and jumping to gratitude, or other people have even had it worse. They never had those things. He worked himself honestly to a place where he could say this. The experience of loss does not have to be the defining moment in our lives. Instead, the defining moment can be our response to the loss. It is not what happens to us that matters so much as what happens in us. Wow. That's somebody that has street cred, has credibility. It will require a kind of sacrifice. The sacrifice of believing that however painful our losses, life can still be good. Good in a different way than before, but nevertheless good. I would highly recommend this book. And again, if you want my list of books that I recommend, come in and I'll make some copies for you. I highly recommend this book. This is a little illustration of how loss doesn't go away, but it can heal. So when you first have loss, the rectangle is your life. And there's like a pain button. And the loss is just there. And it's constantly causing you pain. Just, you're just in pain. But as you live, the loss doesn't get smaller. Your life gets larger. Because even though it was a horrible loss, you're living next year and the year after, and other memories are made. And so the loss gets smaller. Every once in a while, even if you've processed it well, because they're gone until Jesus comes back, something will happen and it will just hit that pain button and just bowl you over. And you're like, it's been 6 years. How could it come back so strongly? But if you have dealt with it well, then you just deal with that one incident and you realize, because I loved them and they're not here. And you remember them. But it's not all the time. And it's not because that person becomes less important to you, but your life grows larger and they become part of that larger story. This is something I wrote for introducing a new course, The Power of Grief and Human Flourishing. Grief, the human response to loss, is one of the most powerful emotions we experience. It has the power to stifle personal growth, mute relationships, and drive people to addiction in order to avoid the pain it causes. But grief, when faced and processed, also has the power to bring forth knowledge, creativity, and a passion to help others. That has been true in my life. One of the things I did, and there can be healthy things that you do as you process grief, I wanted to know Jesus. As I was a little girl, when I was a little girl, missing my mom and wiping my nose on my Snoopy's ears and crying in my room, I felt the presence of Jesus with me, and I trusted him. Now, I had to deal with my mom's death again at milestones in my life, but Jesus made a relationship with me then. It started by my family and my mom teaching me about Jesus, my dad continuing it, but he was with me. And because of that, I had, because of thanatology comes from the Greek thanatos, which means death, and ology, the study of. So I was raised in a thanatological context. I knew about grief. It's one of my earliest memories that death happens. So because of that, I just kind of had a radar for people who were grieving. I can just kind of see it. And I care because I know what it's like. And just the personality that God has given me. But those are gifts that he brought from that. Knowledge, sometimes I would just read and read and read. Or sometimes people go into, psychology. They go into counseling. They go into pastoring. They go into helping fields because of what happened to them. Creativity. Do you know how much art and literature, scholarship, comes out of pain, out of dealing with pain? People just make art, and while they're doing that, they're expressing themselves. There was a woman who, for the first time, all of her family were artists except her, but when her child was killed, she started chiseling rocks. And not only did she make those beautiful things and the healing happening as she used her hands, she did something really neat at the grade school. She had each of the grade school kids draw something that they really liked, that meant a lot to them. And she found this big rock, and they put it in front of the grade school, and she chiseled that little emblem of something that made that child happy or that was meaningful to them, and they could go and touch it. Creativity happens. A lot of my piano playing, I was a classical pianist and went from a major in that to a minor in that. Playing the piano helped. Music can help express that. And English literature is what I ended up with. So I'm just giving you, because the literature helped. Then I got an MA in religion because I wanted to look closely at the Bible. A lot of who I am and what I'm interested in and how I process grief happened because of that. So, and I'm sure I'm just using me as an example because I know me pretty well, but you can think of other people and other institutions. How many people have started orphanages or come to be a person of power and wealth and used that to help others because of grief? Okay, your story matters. It's what makes you unique. Own it. Work it out. It will fuel your vocation, deepen your compassion, and make you able to feel again. But if you suppress and deny and avoid and medicate and do your stirbs, you will not live fully. And you'll be about this thick, like a thin character in a book, instead of someone who can live from their whole being. Does that make sense? Our misery often becomes our ministry because we know it well. But don't skip to ministry process it, or you'll just be a talking head. All right, how will you make meaning? Making meaning is finding a connection to your loved one to honor them. I have someone that I know who honors her parents that were killed by being the kind of person that they raised and bringing that into the world and getting the degree that they wanted to see her get that degree, and she did. I said to a student, you know, why don't you, she said, my grandmother made the best cheesecake. I said, why don't you get a recipe? Make that cheesecake and then eat it with people who loved her and talk about her and everything. She said, I tried, I'm terrible at cheesecake. I said, okay, go to the Cheesecake Factory. Everybody order their favorite cheesecake and sit around and tell stories about her. Make grandma's apple pie at Thanksgiving or Christmas and spend a little time laughing and crying because your grandma was a nut, but she was also such a wonderful, caring person. So that really helps at these times. Maybe she was a gardener or your grandfather was a gardener. So you get a cool little spade and you hang it on the tree at Christmas. And you say to the young ones, your grandfather could make any place look alive. He had a green thumb. Do you know what a green thumb is? It's somebody who can make plants grow. He was so good at that. I can see that in you. That's bringing their memory forward. And that's a beautiful thing. Sometimes they supported AWR. They sent checks to AWR or ADRA. And so you think, you know what, that was important to them. I'm going to make a big donation. Or I'm going to start supporting them monthly. And I'm going to do that in honor of them. Or maybe you start Mothers Against Drunk Driving or something to honor them. I'm going to tell you something sad, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow a little. It used to be that when you looked at Kavanaugh's 7 Aspects or the Harvard bereavement study or the steps, everything ends with acceptance and then withdrawing the energy that you invested in that relationship and putting it in to other people or other things because they're gone now until Jesus comes. In the last 12 years, really even before that, the 10 before that, I just saw a shift as I taught this as a professor. From the last one being acceptance and reinvesting to staying connected in healthy ways to opening the door wide to spiritualism. I took a course from David Kessler, 14-week course, fantastic course. And only once did he mention what has become part of his teaching. He said, stay away as you're doing grief coaching from politics and religion, like you would. He said, because some people are uncomfortable with seeing a medium. Yes, some people are uncomfortable with seeing medium. It wasn't some people want to, and some people are uncomfortable. His presupposition is it's a good thing, but some people are uncomfortable with it. He did a week in Grieve to Believe, and he had a medium there. And if you can imagine, we'll talk about that more tomorrow. It grieves my heart. He's so good at what he does. And Satan has just come in a way that is so evil and coercive. So when I'm saying making meaning, of course, I'm not talking about staying connected in those ways. Here's ways I've made meaning. This presentation. I had a master's in religion, emphasis New Testament. I was hired to teach Jesus in contemporary society. This class kind of came along with it. And I thought, I didn't even know this class existed. And I get to teach this. Me, with my experiences, it was amazing. Becoming a grief coach, talking to my children about my birth mother, and showing them pictures and saying to my daughter, you have the range and the beautiful voice of my mom. Skipped a generation, and you have it. Or, you have the creativity, or I can see the silliness in you, whatever. And that resulted in them naming my second granddaughter Marvel. They named her after my mom. That was so precious to me. Do you understand that my mom's pictures on the piano or wherever, they're black and white? And they're still, because her life ended at 24 on this earth. But the pictures of my granddaughter are full color and alive. And she's bigger than this, and she's interactive. She smiles and coos, and her life will continue. New memories made. I can't even tell you how this fills my heart. And it was a surprise. They didn't tell me until she was born. And they didn't know this. They just picked Inez, my daughter-in-law is Brazilian. And this is a Brazilian name. Do you know what my mom's middle name was? Ione, I-O-N-E. 4-letter middle name starting with I. She was born on, well, I'll start with my mom. My mom was born, she died. She died on March 31, 69. And my granddaughter was born on March 8/23. Here's why that's important to me. It comes full circle. Do you remember that I would get sad in the spring? This is a real good reason to be happy in the spring. What a gift. What a gift God gave me in this. How many of you know Johnny Erickson taught a story? Amazing, beautiful woman, great future, dove in a place that was too shallow, broke her neck, became a paraplegic. She does art with a brush in her teeth. She's an amazing artist. She still gets really sick sometimes. Her faith in God is amazing. Look her up on YouTube and listen to her. Someday we will stand amazed, she says, to see the top side of the tapestry and how God beautifully embroidered each circumstance into a pattern for our good and his glory. Another place she said, maybe the truly handicapped people are the ones that don't need God as much. They don't realize their need. He has chosen not to heal me, but to hold me. The more intense the pain, the closer his embrace. Let me tell you something. She didn't jump to that. She has worked through grief time and again. It won't always be like this because of Jesus. We won't always have loss because a new heaven and a new earth will come. For the first heaven and the first earth passed away. This is Jesus talking to John in Revelation. And there will be no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling is now among the people. He's tabernacling with them. He's moved into the neighborhood. He will dwell with them. It's what he always wanted and what we want. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them, and he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain or even mosquitoes. For the old order of things has passed away. And he who is seated on the throne is so excited about this, and it's so important that John write it down so you know. He said, I am making everything new. Write this down. Are you getting this? Write this down. For these words are trustworthy and true, and the morning is coming. Okay. Until then, we have grief to process. And if we want to fully live, we will face the pain. All right, we can't heal. This is new. This was just today. There's 5 of them. Can anybody, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, can anybody come up with any of these? This one rhymes, so it's good. We can't heal what we don't. It rhymes. But good. No, basically, but we can't heal what we don't feel. Grief is powerful. It will create or destroy. Very good. Loss doesn't go away. It becomes a part of our larger life. Or what did I say? Was it life? Story. Very good. Our blank is more important than the loss. Our what? Response. What is more important even than the loss and how our life is going to be? Our response. What is it? What is our what? Response. Let's do it all together because this will make a difference in your life. What is more important than the loss? Our That is a beautiful response. You can blank, God can bring blank from loss. You can create meaning, and God can bring healing from loss. This is God's desire for you. He wants to comfort those who mourn, provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. God doesn't beat you up for having ashes. He doesn't beat you up for mourning. He understands despair. But that's not where he wants to leave you. All right, today's opportunities for healing and growth: spend time with God in silence, share a story of grief. You're going to listen with a heart, like a heart with ears. I'm going to come back to that. Here's your homework. Maybe you should take a picture of this because I know you want to do it. Go ahead and get out your cell phones. That'd be good because I know you're going to want to do this and I don't want you to miss out. All right, some cell phones are coming out. If you feel anxious, if you feel despairing, depressed, if something is going on, stop and acknowledge a loss. Take note of the feelings. My Aaron is getting married, and I can tell it's making me anxious. Name it. He's not going to be in our family of origin just anymore. Express the grief. I'm saying goodbye to all those stages. Make conscious choices around it. I'm actually going to go through this grieving process, an ugly cry and everything. So that's what you're going to do. And listen, if you don't have the emotional energy or the time to do this at camp meeting, that's okay. Do it next week. Put it in with an alarm. Make time for it. And this is what you're going to do now if you choose to accept this mission. I highly encourage you to do it. There's no coercion. I'm not going to make you feel guilty. But I do encourage you to do this. To share a story of grief. To share a really hard one. And this is what you're going to do if you choose to accept this. Promise not to share their story. Tell a story of grief. Listen to a story of grief. Just listen. Be a what? Just be a heart with ears. Give no advice. And at the end, just say, thank you for sharing. They will tell it meant something to them. They can tell by your eyes, by your presentness, that you weren't thinking of the next thing, and by the way you showed that you cared. All right, here's what I'm inviting you to do. And we have 25 minutes almost to do this. In groups of 2, you can do 3 or 4 if you think you have the time. You're invited to share a story of grief, and you're encouraged to share a very hard one because it lightens your load, because there's another layer of healing. Grief is like the layers of an onion, and another one comes off when you share your story. Then lovingly listen to another story. Okay, Brian, can we have some music, just some pretty, beautiful music? And here's what I want to say. I want to encourage you to go to someone you don't know. Sometimes that's feels even more safe. I'm going to just point him out because you already know. Jeff is an extreme introvert, and he hates it when people pair people up in seminars. And I'm not going to make him do it. Time to go. No. No, that's not it. Nope. But I'm not going to make him do it. I'm not going to make anybody do it. But I am going to encourage him to tell me a story of grief, and I'm going to listen. I do not encourage most people to do that with their spouses now. I encourage you to do it with somebody else. But if you are that kind of person that just really, introvert, extreme on the introvert scale, then do what will be healing for you. This is what we're going to do now. This is my challenge to you. I'm going to talk about it like 60 more seconds. When I was teaching my Issues in Grieving Loss class, a student encouraged me She said, you're giving us so much information. It's so good. It's life-changing. This is what I would hear, every healthcare student should take your class. That was the most often. The other one was, this class is really hard and sometimes I cry when I take it. But it's life-changing and every healthcare student should do it. But she said, it would make so much difference to us if we could share our stories. And so since then, in every class, in groups of 7, and I had 3 adjuncts that worked with me, and I taught them how to do this, they would go around and share their stories, and people would tell stories they never heard or never told before. And they would find commonality. They would think, her story is different than mine, but man, when she told it, I could relate to the grief. But I didn't take over the conversation. I just thought, wow, everybody's human, and everybody is fighting something. Why not be kind? And we learned to listen, and we learned to share in a safe space. And it ended up being one of the most powerful things they did in my class. So it always takes courage for me to ask. And every single time, it is so helpful to people. So with that said, you're invited to share a story of grief. You're encouraged to share a very hard one, or the hardest. And you are to lovingly listen like a heart with ears and thank them at the end. Okay, up to you. Time to start to wind down if you're the one talking. And I'd like to encourage you also to only ask clarifying questions. Try not to interrupt that person at all. And as they wind down, this is a good time to say, thank you so much for sharing. I heard you, I tracked with you. I hope you feel heard. No advice, just a gratitude for allowing them to share and letting them know that they were heard.